Elijah.
Thank you, Tom. Good evening and welcome members, officers and those members of the public here at the meeting and those joining us virtually. Just a reminder to those present at the meeting is broadcast live on YouTube. Item 1 on your agenda is apologies, please.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor O'Rourke, Councillor Andrews, Councillor Tinsley, Councillor Locke, Councillor Wheatley, Councillor Cottle-Hunkin, Councillor Lauren Bright and Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Shelby. Item 2, public contribution. We have no public speakers. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. So members with interest to declare should refer to the agenda items and describe the nature of their interest when the item is being discussed. Item 4, agreement of agenda items, part 1 and 2. There are no part 2 items. So I'm going swiftly on to item 5. I have no correspondence. Okay, move on to item 6. Local government reorganisation, pages 3 to 159 on your agenda, on your pack rather. This is to be presented by the Chief Executive and the Leader. Over to you, Chief.
Thanks, Chair. So I've got a number of slides to run through. I'm sure you'll be glad to hear I'm not going to run through the entire case for change. Hopefully you've had a chance to read it. But I'm going to run through and pick out some of the main points from there. So what I'm going to cover and not going to cover, so a quick recap of the process and the journey from almost this time last year to where we are now. I'm not going to talk about whether we agree with the process or LGR at all. We are in reorganisation, so this is what we're doing. I'm going to talk principally about the 451 case for change. So I'm not going to talk or make any comments on any of the other submissions that are being made around the county, from the County Council, Exeter, Plymouth, Torbay, etc. Purely concentrating on our case. I'm going to touch briefly on the options appraisal process that went through as part of the building and developing the case, but not again going to detail or review our case in comparison with any of the other models being submitted anywhere else. We'll touch on the financial case, which is contained within the papers, where again this is at a high strategic level, so I won't be delving into low details around unit costs, debt restructuring and all of that. That's for another time. I'll touch briefly on what will happen next following submission, assuming you approve a submission, but won't be considering those factors and those things that are reserved for a potential incoming shadow council. Touch briefly on the national context, but again, will not consider whether or not the process will be delayed or otherwise. Again, touching on councillor numbers, it should say, and democratic representation, but again, won't be delving into the detail of how many councillors per ward for each area, and or the makeup of neighbourhood area committees and how they might be governed, what decisions they may take. Those items reserved for another day. So the focus is on the 451 model selected, and that's where all the work has been done to develop the case for change in front of you this evening. So as I said, just recapping the process. So it's almost a year ago now when the government introduced the English devolution white paper just before Christmas in 2024, which started this entire process of reorganising local government in England. You will recall at the beginning of the year in January, you approved the leader to sign a letter on behalf of the council to the then minister Jim McMahon, setting out that we didn't support, that you didn't support a single unitary council for the whole of Devon. That the leader and I should work with the other Devon districts, leaders and chief execs to explore options in change, in light of that white paper. You've met further on the 17th of March, where obviously shortly after the details of the criteria and the process were released, recognising there was a lot of work to be done between that period in March and where we are today in November. The then model, called the 145 at the time, highlighted in that report, be considered as the part of that submission and delegated then the leader and I to submit that interim proposal. Just a quick recap. The 451 model, as it's now known, comprises 3 unitary councils, one being Torbay and the Southern Devon Unitary, so shadowed in grey on the screen there, with a population of around 426,000. In grey, so in green, we've got the Exeter and Northern Devon Unitary, of which Torridge is part of, and that's shown on the top of the screen in green with an estimated population of 546. And the blue being Plymouth, retaining its current unitary boundaries in that model, with a population of around 268,000. So the focus of the work that's been done over the months since January, since March, much of which we've shared with you during the course of the year, is principally about delivering better outcomes, transforming, reconfiguring government, local authority structures in the area for the benefit of our residents, to improve services for residents and communities. We've based the work that's been done to be compliant with the government's invitation for reorganisation. So you'll recall things like around £500,000, 500,000 population being one of the thresholds, using and basing existing district council boundaries as the building blocks for new structures, notwithstanding then that structural changes around boundaries shouldn't be considered. So it's about then providing balance, again in fitting with the government criteria, that new organisations should be fairly balanced economically as far as possible and in population terms. So throughout the document you'll see it's set out in view of meeting the criteria established for the process. There's a strength of ambition in there through the vision and the ambition of your council leaders and our colleagues across the other 7 districts in what this model can do for the area. And there's been a strong focus of collaboration throughout this process. So you'll see and recall from presentations we've done before, there was a period mainly across the summer where an option appraisal assessment was carried out, looking at 8 different options. They're in the paper, so I'm not intending going through each of those in detail. So a process was undertaken to filter and come up with the optimal solution. Obviously, you can't possibly produce 8 detailed business cases to the extent of this to the extent of the case for change for those 8 different options. Now, clearly, thinking about fitting in with the criteria, we started looking at applied the criteria to each of the models. In the first phase then, 3 of those models were eliminated due to poor performance across the levels of criteria. So being wide disparities in population, economic indicators, fragmented geographies, limited alignment with existing service footprints, such as the NHS and emergency services, and weak engagement mechanisms. So because they failed to meet the basic criteria, they were eliminated. Following that, then the remaining 5 were reconsidered in light of the criteria, and a number of filters were applied. Principally, the largest being the avoiding the grouping of the main urban areas, Plymouth, Exeter and Torbay, into a single unitary authority. The reason being that would create an oversized and unbalanced authority compared to the rest of the county area. And also we looked at obviously limiting boundary changes, and I'll come on to the limited boundary change to Plymouth a little bit later in the presentation. And not anything specific to us, but protecting national park areas. So that led us to the choosing option 451. And that's why we've come up with that. And unlike other proposals that would leave a large single unitary authority covering most of Devon, the 451 model preserves local identities, enhances democratic participation, and avoids the risk of over-centralisation. So I'm sure you will have heard the 451 plus model, as I mentioned earlier. So it's been recognised throughout the process that Plymouth had ambitions to expand its boundaries, and one of the option appraisal was to consider whether a 451 plus variant would be suited, and that 451 plus enhances or expands the area around the planning policy area of Plymouth, so contained to 5 parish boundary areas. That has the impact of increasing the population in the Plymouth area to around 275,000. So in terms of the overall balance, doesn't make a significant impact on the southern unitary, but does balance out the population and some of the economics in that area. So that's been a point of consideration and discussion for a period of time through this process. So then obviously a key part of the process is looking at the finances. Obviously given the pressures on services and the reductions in government funding, finances are a critical part of the process. So a very detailed process went through to look at all the different options, different models, with the support of some external organisations. And all our Section 151 officers have been intrinsically involved in this process, along with colleagues from Pixel and KPMG. So the business case, the 451 model, demonstrates the ability on a base case of delivering recurring savings of around 77 million. So that's what we consider the best possible case. If you stretch case, then increasing that to around 124,000, which has risks and may be more difficult and will be more difficult to deliver. In terms of implementation costs, on the base case around 73 million and 100 million on the stretch case. And then when we look at the cumulative ongoing benefits, and the base case, it's 123 million after 5 years and 508 million after 10 years. Now, bear in mind, we're talking about a budget for the area of 2.2 billion. So whilst these figures sound enormous, and they are significant in context to a 2.2 billion budget, they represent a modest percentage. So in terms of where those savings come from, clearly there's operational savings, which are a significant part of that. And operational savings are determined by kind of optimising leadership. So you, as you move to smaller larger structures but a fewer number of organisations, you reduce the leadership of the organisation. You right-size the organisation, so bring in efficiencies of scale. And then you can consolidate things like IT services, corporate back office services, and things like asset and property optimization. Social care, clearly being the largest expenditure of upper tier authorities, as you'd expect, you'd be looking to demonstrate some significant savings in there, and those are across both adults and children's social care. And finally, looking at the non-social care savings, looking at the things intrinsic in the rest of the organisation and where savings could be delivered from bringing organisations together. So you've got things around highways, public health, housing, culture, environmental, central, and all the other costs involved in running councils. So moving on to stronger community engagement and neighbourhood empowerment. The first part of this is obviously looking at councillor numbers, and there's a process that goes through to determine councillor numbers in new organisations, notwithstanding which the government thresholds are the upper threshold of 100 for unitary councils and a lower threshold of 30. Our existing councillor number makeup across Devon totals 481. So part of the process has been looking at other local government reorganisation models and using that as part of the basis for identifying indicative councillor numbers for the new authorities. So we're aware of unitary reorganisation taking place in Dorset, Buckinghamshire, Somerset, etc., etc. And across those, they've averaged just over 4,000 electors per councillor. So in the case for change, you'll have seen for the 451 model, indicative councillor numbers for the Torbay and Southern Unitary of 83, indicative councillor numbers for the Exeter Northern Unitary of 94, with Plymouth remaining at 57. So overall indicative councillor numbers of 234. Obviously, during the course of implementation and following Vesting Day, when those councils are in place, there'll be a formal process of boundary review considered, and then the numbers of councillors will be reconsidered at a later date. And for context, our neighbouring unitary council, Cornwall, with an electorate of 434,000, has a ratio of just under 5,000 electors per councillor, giving 87. So it's in the broad bandwidth of what you'd expect to see, or what the government would expect to see. So moving forward in terms of how things might be structured, obviously we don't have a mayoral strategic authority at the moment. We've got a county combined authority, but as we move forward potentially through devolution, the structure there on the screen is what it might look like, with your mayoral strategic authority covering an area yet to be determined at the top. In our model, 3 unitary councils below that, with devolved powers pushing down from the top below that. Each of the councils will have its own governance arrangements and governance structures, so full council, cabinet and other relevant and required committees. Then from the cabinet model, you would potentially see some devolution, some delegation of powers down to neighbourhood area committees. The number and location of those neighbourhood committees is yet to be determined and would be determined by any incoming shadow authority. Sat below that then you'd have the local community networks, Again, the location, the makeup and numbers of those would be determined at a later stage. But that's where you bring in your town and parish councils, your voluntary sector, police, health and ward members, bringing together that locality. So understanding what's happening on the ground. And then obviously you'll have the feed in from residents and the like. So what happens next? So assuming we submit our case for change on Friday. Friday is the deadline, so it needs to be in before a minute to midnight. I'd certainly hope if we can submit somewhere we do it before then. So that'll be the formal submission to MHCLG for local government reorganisation in Devon. Then what is expected to happen, that'll be discussed, determined, analysed at MHCLG with ministers, with I expect input from our local MPs. And from January, we'd expect then the formal public consultation process to take place. As I'm sure you've seen, is now taking place in the devolution priority programme areas elsewhere in the country. Then expectation is a decision to implement a proposal would take place. The government would make that decision, currently expected to be before the summer recess. So that would indicate the exact proposal that the government's minded to implement. Likewise, as you've seen recently with reorganisation in Surrey. So the government's been minded to implement a two unitary model reorganisation in Surrey. What will happen then across the summer into the early autumn is the laying or the preparation of secondary legislation and the making up of a structural charges order. So that will provide all the detail and instruction that the incoming shadow authorities will require to start the process for the elections that will take place in May 27 and start to give us direction on how those shadow authorities should be structured. Then there'll be that transition period between the autumn of 2026 right through until March 2028, when Torridge, one of the existing councils, will continue delivering its daily services, business as usual, but equally working with those other organisations preparing for transition. And the current time frame indicates then a vesting day, implementation day of the 1st of April 2028, when those new authorities will come into being and Torridge would cease to exist. So in that process of implementation, some of that formal legislative stuff doesn't happen until next year. We're already in discussion and starting to consider what is called the preparation for implementation might look like. So that some of that work can start now as soon as submissions been made, and there's many pieces of work that can be done regardless of where lines and boundaries will be drawn on maps later on. So all of the organisation have staff terms and conditions, contracts in place, service contracts, assets, all of the data for which can be collated and collected and stored in a single central place in readiness for implementation later. So it's recommended that that's started now, because that work, as I said, doesn't have any bearing on where lines might be drawn on the map, and doing it early obviously benefits rather than leaving it till last minute. Then from the the Minister of State's decision, as I said, expected to be around July of next year. That will then indicate the proposal to be implemented, so you can start working on more detailed work around what services will look like, what your governance arrangements might look like, etc., etc. Then obviously you start to move forward with the election of shadow councillors, and those shadow councillors will then have different arrangements and different project plans to move forward to vesting day, so you can start developing your financial strategies, your strategic plans, etc., for your organisation. And during that period, the appointment of your key statutory officers would take place. So your chief exec, your section 151 officers, your monitoring officers, and your directors of services. So at that point then you'd move forward with appointed officers working with those shadow members. And then you move forward into go live the 1st of April 28. So at that point, I'm going to hand you over to Leader.
You've got the slides for me. Right, the summary and conclusion. What I will say is that the districts have all worked really well together ever since we started before COVID with Team Devon. There has been quite a team spirit of all working together to try and manage how we're going to come up with the best for all of this. So within the districts, there has been, well, certainly within the rural districts, there's all been agreement. Obviously, there is a little bit of a different view in a couple of the urban ones. But the thing with the 451 is that it does meet all the government's criteria, and that is quite important. That when you look at it, we were given 6 criteria that we needed to meet. We worked with and employed KPMG to do this work for us. They've been working with 14 other applications throughout the country, and what they're feeding back to us, and we have to assume is what they're feeding back to us is what they believe, is that ours is the one that seems to stack up as good as any, if not better than most. So we're looking at the how we will, because what will happen is we will start looking at what we can do as we move forward, but it won't be area based on what the government's decided the areas will be. It will be looking at things like, well, we've got, I'll skip the ambitious and the focus of change. There is a focus of change, there is improvements to be made, and in that reconfiguration, we will be looking at things like backroom services and other services that are not place-based, because what we won't know at that stage is what the government's going to say are the different places they've come to. So we will be looking at what within the group, and it has to be all the ones that are in it together. We look at building the existing good performance, the good standards, and highlighted through this document is what we're doing well in the various sections, particularly in Torridge. We've come out very well in most of the assessments. There's a robust financial analysis, and again, we're in a reasonably good position there. And we've worked on what's achievable and what's deliverable, not necessarily on a wish list that we know will not be accepted by the government and will not actually achieve anything at the end of the day. So we've moved forward on that sort of level. So if we move on, so throughout virtually all the rural districts, members, we have stuck with the 451, and we've already had a couple of council meetings yesterday and today that have already passed that they will go with the 451. There's 2 or 3 meetings tonight, and we'll all be watching each other probably tomorrow morning when we get the reports. but it does seem that the 451 is the most acceptable one to deliver what we want in Devon, in terms of the equal balance of the numbers, the financial balance and everything else. The 451 plus is coming a little bit because obviously Plymouth has got, and they're getting a lot of backing from the government for growth because of the defence and stuff like that. And the plus bit is that in their, and I always get this wrong, but in their growth area, they've included about 4 or 5 parishes that are in South Hams. Now, South Hams are nervous about it, but they do accept that if the minister decided, we can't decide because doesn't fit the criteria. The 451 does fit the criteria, meets all the criteria. If we put in the 1 plus, it actually goes beyond it because it talks about district council boundaries movement, and you can't do that under the present government realignment. But if the Secretary of State looked at it and decided that these 5, I think there's 5 parishes that are within Plymouth's growth plan, it's acceptable to allow them to have that. What we've said is the districts on a whole, and it affects South Hams, it doesn't affect anybody else, is that we are not opposed to that happening. So, but it has to be a Secretary of State decision, not the councils that are doing the unitary. So from my side and from the Chief Exec, we've worked really hard on this. I said earlier, I've been really impressed on how we've all worked together as a districts to try and get what is best for our members, our communities. We have been all the way through opposed to one large Devon one, but I'm not going to knock the other applications, whatever comes forward, options. I'm only interested in what we're going to do and what we're going to do for our community. And at the moment, the 451 does look the best one. And as a backup, we are saying we would go with 451 plus, but it has to be the Secretary of State's decision, it's not ours, because it does mean moving the district boundaries, and all along the government has said the district boundaries are the building blocks of the new unitaries, and they're not prepared to have a boundary commission review at this moment in time. They just want to work on how we reorganise the districts to work together. So I would like to recommend we go with the 3 options as they're printed in front of you, and I'd like to propose that's what we do. It is the way forward. It's the one most likely to succeed, but I can't guarantee that the government will go that way. What we have seen with Surrey is that they decided what they were going to do, and that's gone by the way. So thank you.
You're seconding that, Claire, take it.
Yes, I'd like to second the recommendations. I wholeheartedly endorse what the leader and the chief executive have said. This has been examined very carefully, and I think this is the best option for Devon. Thank you, and for Tonbridge.
Well, I was going to say, I don't think there's an awful lot of point in debating very much on this because, you know, the decision, it is what it is. But Councillor Branton?
Thank you, Chair. Well, really, it's more on a point of order, really. We've got the recommendations there on page 7. Does that not allow for any further recommendation or alternative recommendation?
The recommendations, as shown, are what went in by they've got to go in by the end of this week, and they've got to be fully endorsed, and simply it's this recommendation or nothing, I'm afraid, because the work that would be needed to do another one, we have looked at other options.
Well, there are other options on the table, that's the point I'm making. There are other options in the report.
But not, only the 451, or the 451
No.
plus, as I explained.
We've got a selection of options there. I mean, for example, I was willing to move option F, alternative 4, for example, which is an option put forward where would, I think, be more beneficial for Torridge than what we've got on the table at the moment. And I'd like to know, for example, am I allowed to move that as a recommendation to this council for them to actually make a decision on, or no?
Councillor Brendan, if you move that recommendation, I'm sure it can be voted on, but you've got no information in front of you of what that business case looks like. So if members were to approve that, you'd be approving something you know nothing about other than the lines on the map. So you haven't got any of the information in front of you for that recommendation to be considered.
That recommendation, the option F, for example, that has been looked at, has been costed, it has been, and it says in the report, these other options have been studied and passed the criteria. So I don't understand why ours is all right, all got all the bells and whistles, for example, and another recommendation doesn't.
Well, we were tasked with bringing an option forward
Yes.
that was agreed by the majority of the district councils
Yeah.
and the other councils, and need the information to back it up. And so if we went with a different option, we would be different to all the other district councils in Devon at this stage, because they've all, on Monday morning, everybody agreed that we would go with the 451 because it does stack up as the best option. Obviously, option F has been looked at, and in terms of KPMG, it's been sort of, I wouldn't say it's been dismissed, but it doesn't meet all the criteria. Sorry,
Chair,
Steve.
I know, so I need to add, so there's nothing in that report other than that model, so none of the finances are in your report for that model. So only high level criteria have been looked at, as I said at the start of the meeting, to look at those options, because you couldn't possibly produce 8 full business cases to the extent on all of those models.
Thank you. Not to contradict you, Councillor Brenton, but when the options are listed, if you look at page 58, it says our shortlisting and filtering process, and it says in the final paragraph, the process narrowed our shortlist to 3 final options, C, C plus and F. Each of these options was then subject to further comparative analysis and scoring to support informed discussion among council leaders and chief executives. It then goes on to say, a careful deliberation re-agreed that option C referred to throughout our proposal as the 451 model represents the best way. So it dispenses with option F, I'm afraid, with further analysis. That's how I've read this report, that they went through various stages, and correct me if I'm wrong,
Yep.
and filtered out what they thought were the best options to have. So that's my interpretation. You may be reading it differently.
Could I come back?
Yes, Councillor Branton, yeah.
Well, you see, as you said in your briefing, Councillor James, other councils are debating this even tonight, aren't they? You know,
Yeah.
so it's not a fait accompli on any council, is it? There is going to be debate taking place. Otherwise, we're wasting our time. If this is just it, then why are we here? You know, I mean, it's got to be, in a democracy, there's got to be alternatives and also other viewpoints that can be put forward and voted on. That's the point I'm trying to make. And that's the point I wanted to highlight here tonight about option F. So, which I believe is by far the better one for Torridge, because it doesn't include Exeter. And I think that Exeter is going to water us down and actually disadvantage us terribly. Much as I love Exeter as a city, but nonetheless, it will disadvantage us.
Yeah.
So I guess if you voted through option F, we would have to go away and redo the business case on that option and not submit anything.
But it's already done, is it not?
Now, the business case, this business case is all about 451. It's not about that 4-unitary model. So we have to reconsider the financial case and all the other modelling.
Sorry, but there is a business case. It's been done by Plymouth, hasn't it? This one on option F. So they've got there is the facts and figures in that option, because as you know, when we looked at this originally, we were told that we had to, you couldn't just look at Torridge in its isolation. You had to look at all the rest of Devon and how it would affect it. And that's what Plymouth have done. So I don't understand why that stuff isn't available at this particular time.
Chairs is available, but it's not in front of this council at this particular time. So if you're going to take a decision tonight and want to consider that, and bring that back, we miss the deadline on Friday.
Councillor Thomas.
The leaders have said that we're all agreed about 451, but I think actually what he means is the leaders and chief executives of the councils involved are agreed. Not we are all agreed as in all the councils are agreed, because I think there are plenty of councillors on this council and probably various other councils that don't agree with the 451. Personally, I think we're being offered possibly the least worst of a number of bad options. And on that basis, I would like to propose that we don't put forward a submission, because I think the whole process is flawed. I don't think we have the information. Some of the things in this report, yes, it's very positive, but positive statements don't really change reality. Page 51 talks about 3 sensible geographies for the 3 unitaries. Yet we've got a proposed unitary that stretches from Hartland Quay to Rowlands Hill, over 80 miles. To me, that doesn't seem like a sensible geography. There's mention in the document, page 52, suggests the Northern Unitary can focus on enhancing connectivity along the A30, the A361, etc. Are we going to upgrade the link road again? Is that one of the things they're suggesting? The last project, with the dual carriageway that we hoped for, I don't think anyone's proposing we're going to start that again. So I think a lot of the statements in this document are just, they're aspirations. I don't think they're really realistic. And I don't think we've got the information in front of us to really come to an educated decision. There's talk about the costs, estimated costs, 74 to 101 million. The money might be taken from our reserves, might have to borrow. How much the projected savings is loss of jobs? How many jobs are going to be lost from Torridge District Council? What impact is that going to have on our economy locally? Savings. Best case scenario, 805 million over 10 years. Sounds like a lot of money. But it's less than 3%. If you look at the current total of the 11 existing council budgets, the base case, 508 million, is less than a 2% saving. So I just don't see that all this disruption to services is justified, and the loss of democracy. It's a huge loss of democracy that's happening here. We've got, at the moment, 36 district councillors, 5 county councillors serving Torridge. Based on the figures you're talking about, we're going to have 93 councillors, or 94 councillors for the new unitary. Torridge will probably get about 15, based on our population figures. So we'll have 16% of the total. And as Councillor Brenton said, Exeter's going to have a lot more councillors. It's going to suck up a lot more resources and power. And I just don't think that this proposal is in the interest of the people of Torridge. The introduction, Ford talks about our duty and suggesting it's our job to make the best of it and come up with the best solution. I think our duty to the people who elected us is to reject proposals that aren't in their interest. I don't think we should put a submission forward.
Thank you. I'll certainly opinion.
The point is, we were charged with talking with the other districts, talking to KPMG, the people that actually do this and know what they're doing. And as I said earlier, they're doing 14 of these options over the country. What they're proposing is that we say to the government, we don't like what you're doing, and then we're gonna end up where Surrey was, where they did a consultation, and about 60% said they like it like it is. The main district stuck together and into something different. The two county councils actually wanted a 2 unitary, and the government, everybody else put forward a 3, and the government said, we're not interested in what you want, we will go with what you're going to be told, and that was a 2 unitary. The situation we face is we've used the professionals, they've come up with all the information, they've given us a way forward to work with the right number of people, the population, which is around approaching or slightly over the 500,000 mark. They've said that each area needs to have a main economic driver, in which case ours would be Exeter, like it or not, but at least it would bring in East Devon and Mid Devon, which are quite growth areas. Mid Devon have made it absolutely clear they're with the 541. They don't see Northern Devon as a financial option, because if you look at that figure, you're looking at about 150
When
less.
you say mid-Devon, you're
Sorry, can
talking
you
about the
just
leader
do
and
it?
chief
Hang on a second.
executive.
So basically, if we go away tonight without making a decision on 451, we would have let the other districts down, because as I understand it and what they're telling me, they're all going to go 451, and as I understand it, the ones who've already voted have gone 451, and then we will be a little alcove of independence. We're not taking any notice of the government. We don't mind that we don't get any money. We don't mind that we don't get jobs, because we don't like what the government's predicting. And I'm sorry, that is totally irresponsible to the members of this community. Our job is to do the best for them, even if we're not over happy with what we're being told to do. We can all make grandstand statements about, oh, this isn't fair on our people. Neither will it be fair on our people if Torridge is left out. The other districts all agree, and we find that we are second best, or not even second best to the rest of the districts, and we will get the financial support that the government will give us to go along with what they want us to do. So I'm afraid it's very easy to grandstand, very easy to say, this is what I want. This is an exercise that's took a lot of time, a lot of money. Every Monday I've met with the other district councillors from the other district leaders from all of Devon, and on Monday we all agreed that the only sensible option that is backed up by the facts and the works that KPMG have supplied us with is 451, with just that little caveat that if the government says Plymouth can grow within their growth area, because those 5 parishes are actually in their local plan as such, then that's where we are. We can go away tonight and say, we made a grandstand. We actually stood up for the people of Torridge, and then when they got no money, and the other districts are making all the decisions, where do you go then? I'm sorry, the government will decide, and they will decide on whether we've made a responsible option and decision. And that is where we are. It's the reality of the world that we're facing at the moment.
Thank you, Ken. Councillor Mrs. Branton.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I must say, this is very alarming. I really do find this very alarming. First of all, I find it alarming that somebody who is impassioned about the concerns for their constituents and who puts a case that is the opposite of the so-called leadership is accused of grand slamming. I think that is insulting and derogatory.
Let's stick to the
and
point,
not
please,
appropriate.
Councillor Branton.
This is the point.
Yes, the point of your
My
argument. I mean.
point is that this isn't a choice, it's not a vote, it's Hobson's choice. There is no other choice. Now, I don't agree with Councillor Thomas because we've had the luxury of seeing the reports and the business case and the financial projections for the Plymouth option F. We happen to have seen that and been told about it because we have a very strong relationship with certain of the councillors down there. And we know that it is just as good a case, in our opinion, if not better. It doesn't involve Exeter. Having Exeter with us drags in a completely dynamic city and will skew all our social indicators from educational attainment, the age of the population, our job prospects, our wages levels. Every single thing will be skewed and altered by having us in with Exeter. In the past, on this council, we moaned about the fact that Devon County, we never got what the south of Devon got. We were the poor relations because they dragged it all down there, and we're recreating using the same system now for this particular choice. It's going to be a disaster if we have Exeter in with us. We need to have the same sort of districts so that we can all speak with the same voice and use the same hymn sheet when we're telling them of our problems and the things that we need to get from either government or funding or whatever. We know that there are other options. It seems to me scandalous that we have not seen the cases for the other options. They've all been made. We just haven't been told about them. We haven't been able to see them. Now, we have seen one that we think is better than the 451. But that doesn't mean the others shouldn't have been seen as well. This is a democracy. It's about choice. And choice means giving you information, informed consent. That's what we stand for, informed consent, so that people vote on something so important, knowing what they're doing and knowing what is available, knowing what there is out there and making the best choice, the good choice, the right choice. And that's not happening tonight in this council. It absolutely is not.
You will see democracy in action when we take a vote on this, because you can vote either for or against. That is democracy.
Can I come back?
Yes, Councillor.
I will apologise to Councillor Thomas for saying grandstanding, but the point is you are presenting the Plymouth model. The Plymouth model includes Plymouth, Torquay and Exeter and the rest of Devon as one. That is what Plymouth are promoting. Everything except the 3 urban areas will be one. So you've just said about the poor representation we've had over the years from Devon County. We will have Devon County Mark II in effect, because their proposal is that all the rural and coastal areas come under one unitary. So if you look at the map for that, it's a massive area of the whole of Devon, other than Exeter, Plymouth and Torquay. So we lose the 3 economic drivers, which is what the government says we should share out, and we end up with one big Devon County in effect. And as you know, all the districts signed a letter. If you go back to March or before, we signed a letter to the government saying we considered a one huge Devon unitary as not being the beneficial to the areas like us. And we have come off second best to Devon County over the years. And if you go for the Plymouth model, we're going to be in the same group, I'm afraid.
Can I?
Councillor Piper first.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. I think we all know that the government will be making this decision. There'll be multiple options on the table. I would like them to have an informed and viable option that at least has some input from us. That's the way I think the best way forward. So I'll be supporting our leader's proposal for the 451.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. And I will also be supporting our leader's choice. And I want to thank all our officers, because the amount of work that's been done over the last 12 months is almost beyond thought. I understand where Councillor Mrs. Brenton's coming from. And yes, there were other options, but we didn't have the information. We haven't been able to actually have a clear look at all the other options in any great depth over many months. If we had been, perhaps we would be talking about something quite different this evening. And I think that's a loss. I almost think to some degree we've been working with our arms stuck behind our back most of the time. But try as you will, and I'm sure Councillor James has tried, and I'm sure the other leaders have tried as well, to get more information from various other other district councils and, you know, and various other unitaries that exist at the moment. And I don't think that information, I mean, you're very fortunate if you've seen things ahead of us, but we haven't seen it. And I think it's probably going to be our loss in some ways, quite frankly, but who knows? Because at the end of the day, if we put the best option that we can, and I hate to say cobble, because I don't think it actually has been cobbled at all, but there has been developed over a period of time, at least it sounds as if we've done a substantial piece of work to evidence what we're trying to produce at the end of the day, or what we hope that the government will allow us to produce. But you know what? I'm with Councillor Linton. At the end of the day, it won't be our choice, it'll be Westminster's. Thank you, Chair.
And one other point to remember is that, you know, some time back, we charged our chief exec and leader to work with all the other chief execs and leaders around the country to examine all of the models that were available to the southwest or to the Devon area. And that is exactly what they've been doing over the last 12 months or more. And the 451 model is the one that they've come up with collectively as the preferred option. Now, tonight, we won't be the only district council that's voting on this, and as has been said, the decision has to be made and in to the government by 12 o'clock on Friday. Now, what we see if we don't vote in support of it, or we decide not to go with this at all, you know, we'll be outside of the tent looking in, and where that would leave us, you know, God only knows. I think it would be an absolute disaster. But, you know, it's not something that's just, you know, been plucked out of thin air. This is a culmination of a year plus hard work by officers and district leaders. So, Councillor Brendan, I'll give you the opportunity to come back very briefly, and then I'll take it as
I'm going to propose that we do go for option F. I've got a seconder? One anyhow. I'm not being here before, never mind. But the point is about, you did mention, Councillor James, about the rural ones being together and excluded from Exeter and Torbay and Plymouth, you know, as a rural thing. That's our strength. That's the point I want to make. Because if we have a rural unitary authority that does not contain a big urban area, pumping in its wealth and all the rest of it, and its balance of its population, we've got a very aged population here, whereas Exeter isn't, then really we do have a case to government when it comes to getting funding, which we've never had our fair share of. And I do believe that if you said, well, this is a rural unitary, and we're quite unique actually in Devon, because actually we're more remote and rural than is Cornwall. You can get a train from Cornwall easier than you can from Devon. Hartland is still the village furthest away from any train link. The link road, God knows when that's ever going to work and be open, but never mind. That's really our only source of linkage. There's one actually down to Plymouth, but you've been along that Plymouth road, pinched in, you know, it's rubbish. However, the thing is that a rural unitary would actually have the strength to go to government and say, look, this is our particular problem in terms of agriculture, in terms of our population, in terms of education. I only mentioned education. At the last council meeting, I did say to the CEO of the Burton about my apprenticeship, blah, blah, blah. Do you know, today I couldn't do that. I couldn't do it. The facility to do that, my apprenticeship, is gone. Nothing to do with my work. The education bit has gone. Our eldest grandson, who is now luckily on a degree apprenticeship with Rolls-Royce, he did advanced maths at Exeter College. He couldn't do that today. Their bus service is all shot, isn't it? So, you know, there's an opportunity he would have lost had he been doing that just 2 years later than what he's doing now. So I'm saying to you, it's not all lost to actually go for option F at all. All right, Plymouth do well, Exeter do well, Torbay, that's a question mark. Torbay, they were with this 541, weren't they? Where do they actually stand at the moment? Because are they in with Plymouth now? Because that's the impression I get. Or are they with us? What is it? Don't know. So there are question marks. I know it's a leap of faith for you to support me. You don't really, we rarely ever do it before, but you know. I have to say that because I've been brought up, I've lived in North Devon all my life, apart from 3 years Exeter University. I mean, I just despair that we are going to slide backwards into one glorified care home.
Could I just bring your attention to Councillor Brenton's option F? It says a unitary authority including North Devon, Torwich and Mid Devon, which is one we have talked about, and KPMG done an options survey on it and decided it wasn't economic, and also Mid Devon was not interested in it. Retain Plymouth as a unitary authority. A unitary authority including West Devon, South Hams and Tor Bay, and they've already voted on their going 451, or West Devon and South Hams have. A unitary authority including Exeter, Teignbridge and East Devon, and we know that East Devon and Teignbridge are probably going to go 451. So what you're quoting is the Plymouth option, which is not option F, right? Now the Plymouth option is Plymouth continues as a unitary authority with around 270,000 base on the existing unitary council boundary. We think that is probably unlikely. I think they will probably expand slightly to get over 300, but that is what they're proposing, right? Exeter City, a unitary authority with a population of 135,000 on the existing administrative boundary. We know that Exeter edging their bets a little bit with 451, but they are going for an Exeter unitary that will go from halfway up East Devon, halfway up Mid Devon, and nearly out from our side out towards Copplestone. That is what their proposal is, to get their numbers up, right? Tor Bay continuing with a unitary authority of 139,000. So you know that the government's looking for around 500,000 population on whatever option goes forward. So already you've got 270 in Plymouth, 135 in Exeter, 139 based in Tor Bay. Devon County Council as a unitary authority with a population of around 690,000 based on its existing boundary council, including the district of Exeter. So they need Exeter, they need East Devon, they need Mid Devon to make the Devon unitary one financially viable. And what we're saying is the option we're putting forward to you, 451, does take some of that economic development the government's looking for. They are going to look at the business rates and stuff like that. And I'm afraid if we go with the Plymouth option, we are in no man's land. It's not option F.
Councillor Bright, next please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not speaking particularly against the 451 arrangement, but I just wanted to highlight, you know, that
Sorry,
part of
Chris.
this arrangement
Sorry,
is,
you have to speak up a bit, Chris.
part of this arrangement is that it essentially nearly half the council we currently hold across the districts and county. And so your representation to the public is nearly half what it is currently, so I'm not happy with that, but I mean, that's not specific to the 451, I just feel I need to highlight that. And the other thing I want to highlight, the need for offices to be held somewhere locally, because I feel that that local connection needs to be there, and if we easily perceive that once the unitary authority is in place, it will look at efficiencies and slicing off buildings and getting rid of as many as possible. You can already see that happening, but I just want to highlight that as a key need you kind of need to focus on for the unitary authority. I just want to also ask a few questions about how the tax level is decided. It does say about how the districts, the cost of the taxes are kind of averaged out between the districts, but I can't see anywhere where it specifically states about Devon County's portion of that. Like, how's that put in on theirs? I can't see it anywhere in that report. And the other thing I wanted to ask about is the Devon County's current adult or social care budget is kind of ring fenced and separately thought about compared to the rest of the budget. What happens to that in a unitary authority? Is that then part of our budget considerations, or is it still ring fenced in the future, and then we don't have to think about it for whatever reason they decided that in the first place?
Just on council representation, the government has said any unitary can only have between 30 and 100 councillors per unitary. So you will notice that we're just under the 100 on the 5 and a little bit under the 100 on the 4. But if you go to Devon County, which is what the Plymouth recommendation is, you will either have to be 100 to 7,000 councillors, or you will have to break the government's guidelines and go above 100.
Yeah.
So
I
we've
appreciate
got
that.
to
I'm
work
just
with
saying
what the
I don't like
government
it.
says, I'm afraid. So,
Councillor Hames, and hopefully that's the last one.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, just a sort of bit of clarity. I think Councillor Brenton's talking about option 4, option F, isn't he? Not a Plymouth one, surely, which is the 3 district councils combining. It was stated by our leader that Mid Devon didn't want to be part of it. So you could say the same about Exeter not wanting to be part of 541 as well, couldn't you? As to the point about the population criterion from the government, I think it's correct for me to say that in the case of Cumberland, it was divided into 2 unitaries on the basis of a rural characteristic, I think. So why couldn't the same sort of
their own guidelines on, but Cumbria split nicely down the middle, and that was the easy option for them, is to reduce 600,000 population down to 2 of around 300,000, one slightly under, one slightly over. But that county actually split really nicely down the middle with an economic driver on the one side and an economic driver on the other side. So that was a fairly easy option for them. But I can only say that we have extensively studied this, we've worked with other districts, and we have to put something down or we don't. And if we don't, and all the other districts do come in with the 451, we're on our own.
Councillor Whittaker,
Thank
very
you.
briefly if you could, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, and I really don't know, obviously, because other people are thinking about the same thing this evening, and who knows, it may be like this, but we're not. But if it isn't, and everybody else does go for the 451, and at the end of the evening we don't, I wonder where that leaves us. And I'd like you all to think about that, actually, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Councillor Pennington, and this is the last one, so please don't anyone else put their hands up.
Councillor Whittaker, I want to delink the fact that if we don't vote for tonight, we will be punished by the economic well-being for the future. There must be delinking between the two. We have the right to think individually every decisions we make without being threatened. And tonight it reminds me of the shotgun wedding. You sign up or you're going to get shot. And that is the way you presented it, leader, and I think that's a mistake. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me a very brief statement.
Well, that's not the intention, Councillor Pennington. The intention is we have done all the work, KPMG have done all the work. This is what we're presenting, and it's up to you, you know.
Right.
I shall not be here to worry about it probably, but
Okay, well, it's been proposed by Councillor James, seconded by Councillor Hodson. Well, you're in support, you mean? You really want to speak on it? Go on then, Alan.
Sorry. Can I just ask, Peter, are all the costings involved in this, do they incorporate all the pensions and payoffs and all of the staff, negotiations? It's all in there, is it? Absolutely everything?
Yeah, as best we can estimate at this point, yes. Yeah. So all the Section 151s sat around with KPMG and Pixel who help do the modelling, do as much in as much detail as we can at this point, which is still actually quite a high level. But yeah.
And just for clarity, I do not believe anything contained in this propaganda is in the interests of our residents in Torridge at all. This is produced to fit a Westminster directive, which not a single person in this room, I don't think, agrees with. So all of the bump contained within, whilst I appreciate your really hard work, which has detracted from the hard work we should be doing for our residents and costs them a fortune, I don't buy any of it. I think it's a load of rubbish, and I think it's a waste of time and money. And actually, I think this is just pushed upon us, and I really don't see that it will make much difference. And I know you'll be mortified because you put so much time in, and I appreciate your time, but it's not going to make a difference. We will be told what to do, and we will be told what to do because a lot of the councils around this area and most of the country have not dealt with their finances adequately, and all of this is a rearrangement of assets, and that's about the be all and end all, really. So I can't see that it makes much difference whether we vote for this or whether we don't, because it's just going to happen, and we will be told, and will be dictated to, as is the way going forward by the looks of it. Anyway, thank you.
Well, I don't think there's not that many people that will probably disagree with a lot of the sentiment in that comment, but the point is we are where we are, and they have to make a decision because central government have insisted this is the way they want things to go. We have to go with it. Wendy, did you? You did have your hand up, didn't you?
Very briefly, I just feel that, you know, this thing that's saying if you're not in favour of this and you vote against this, and we will be left out in the cold and all the rest of it. I don't believe that that's, you know, we'll just have it imposed on us anyway. In the same way as if Exeter doesn't vote to go in 451, Exeter's not going to be left out in the cold. They're just going to get told they'll, you know, so you don't like it, so 451 is what you're getting. I mean, we're all going to get told 451 is what you're getting if that's what you're saying is what the government's going to say. I don't think it makes a difference whether we vote for it or not. And I don't think it will mean that we're left out in the cold because of it. I just think we'll just get told this is what we've got to do.
Thank you.
So I think you can vote with your conscience.
Being proposed, being seconded, all in favour, please raise your hand. Any against? Any abstentions?
So that's 19 for, 6 against and 1 abstention, Chair.
Thank you, Tom. Well, that clearly shows democracy in action. Thank you. Moving in to item 7 on your agenda is the North Devon Place story, pages 160 to 189. And Sean is going to present this, please.
Thank you, Chair. I hope this will be a slightly less contentious item for us to go through. So I'm pleased to be able to present the Northern Devon Place story for your consideration and hopefully adoption this evening. So the Place story is intended to be a compelling representation of our area that will help to inform whatever comes next in the LGR process. But not only that, because not everything's about LGR, also about inward investment and attract people to our area to do business and enjoy their lives. It's been developed by North Devon Partnerships, North Devon Futures Partnership in conjunction with the two councils. Inner Circle Consulting helped us produce the document, and you might remember them because they helped us with the Torridge Place story as well. It's been endorsed by the members of each of the partnership, so the Futures Partnership are happy to present it forward to you. And that, there's a comment from the leader. The leader is in support, helps it presents a vision for our area. And
Trying to say that carries any weight, are you?
Well, leader of our council, and that leads me to the recommendations, which hopefully we'll be able to adopt the Place story.
And if you want to make any minor adaptations to it, you delegate that to myself in conjunction with the leader to do before it's published. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs Benton?
Thank you, Chair. Well, there are a couple of things in this that I'd like some clarification on. The first is page 180. Sorry, I tried to pronounce it really. And it says PYINNOVATOLWORTHY. Is that Highworthy?
I think it must be. We can make some changes.
It's like,
We can make it Highworthy, can you?
is it like nursery?
Yeah.
Secretly, Highworthy's always had another name, much longer.
I think, Councillor Brenton, that might be an error. Yeah.
Well, it's such a huge one, such a long one. And the other one was something that I do think, yes, there's certain merits in this, but it's terribly cliched. I don't know, was it done by somebody outside Torridge?
It was done. It was produced for us by Inner Circle Consulting.
But I'm glad to say that, because I don't want to criticise any of you. But in that case, it's incredibly cliched. I do think that. And it's told us a lot of stuff we already knew. But it's got this stuff about we're living life at a considered place and we are more intentional in our way of life. What on earth does that mean?
I think it means things get done directly.
Well, seriously. I mean, it's such a meaning. It doesn't mean anything. Don't tell me, unless you're certified, that those people don't intend what they do. And it actually says that later on in this that the intentional way of life is people who value meaningful relationships and experiences. Well, I ask you, I've yet to meet somebody who didn't value meaningful relationships and experiences. Show me one person who says to you, what do you want to do when you grow up, Annie? Or tell me what you want now that you're 55 and old. Well, I don't want any meaningful relationships and no experiences. Who says that? I mean, it's stupid. I do think that is an absolutely stupid, and I'd like it taken out, really, because I think it makes us look silly, quite honestly.
Apart from that, it's brilliant.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing. I have a couple issues with it. It's a bit like on agriculture. Doesn't seem to promote agriculture a great deal. There's no mention of other agricultural shows in the culture section.
That's not culture.
There's you mentioned Oakhill Fest, you don't mention Seb Fest. Okay, is the plough mentioned in there?
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
In passing.
And then there's one sentence that on page, well, it's page 16, the actual thing. I've got to get my goggles down close. 179. Dominance of low-value sectors like agriculture and tourism leads to agriculture and tourism can be considered low value.
I think they mean low waged, actually.
So, calling agriculture and tourism a low-value sector.
That's a good point.
I don't think that's a great idea. Apart from that, I like it. I'd just like to see more of an emphasis on agriculture. Definitely mention our agricultural shows.
That's fine. Thank you very much. They're valuable comments that I'm sure we can incorporate some bits on it.
Can I just point out on the agenda, it says North Devon Place Story, it's Northern Devon. And also, I think we are a little bit light in the Holsworthy area in the report. I brought that up before and I got shut down. I'll bring it up again now from that side. And in terms of the people that did the report, I just point out they did the Twilight Place story and the government went for it and gave us the £20 million investment money. So we have a track record of them delivering what we asked them to deliver.
Are you proposing, Ken?
I'll propose it, yeah.
I was ask, mentioned railways, are they in there somewhere?
No, they're not.
Couldn't see it.
There's no reference to the railway.
Well, you tell that to the students who try to get to Exeter every day from Barnstable.
Sorry.
Sorry, can I pick up the railway thing before I go to sleep, sorry. We have supported as a council the North Devon Railway Alliance and that's been upgrading the Exeter to Barnstaple line in combination, hopefully, with the Bideford to Barnstaple route. So it is a bit of a shame that we don't include promoting public transport in general and the railway in particular, given our commitment to this council.
Thank you, Chair. Page 172, Vibrant Towns, Sean. I think about 38,000 live in north of Bideford Town Hall. Bideford, Northern Appledore, Westwood Hill, one town now effectively, because there ain't much green space left there after all. Like 4,000 in Farrington, 4,000 in Ilsworth, I think it is. 30,000. Their things are vibrant. The villages are vibrant. I represent a rural that's got 12 parishes. Largest is about 600 of our O'Reilly. And I think some of the culture that goes on in those parishes are fantastic. They actually support themselves. They keep their own play areas in good order. They do a bit for themselves that don't recognise that they're sometimes. And I would just like a little bit more recognition of their rural area, rather than just talking about vibrant towns, because Torridge is about a rural community. And I would like to see a stronger representation, please, of rural rather than just vibrant towns. Thank you for your work, Sean.
Vibrant towns and villages.
And Heartland Town, of course.
Sorry?
Heartland Town, of course.
Well, Heartland's not my ward. Well, Heartland's out in the farthest area.
Mr. Piper.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just with my lead for leisure hat on, minor point, but I think we talk about strengths for communities, and I wholly believe that local sport plays a huge part of that, especially in rural areas. Picking up on Councillor Pennington's point, it's absolutely vital to the fabric of our communities. So I would welcome just a brief conversation with Sean about the wording of the section under sport, which I think is light and comes from a consultant that doesn't fully understand the fabric of our area. If I'm briefly honest, and I would like to reiterate Councillor Keneally's point. I was disappointed that the document talks about building on who we are. Well, who we are is agriculture. That is where one of the main drivers of this community comes from. And I feel it's being lost, not just in this place report, but in other things at Torridge at the moment. Agriculture is huge. It's going through a revolution. The technology is building. It's absolutely vital to everything we do. And we've got a huge chance to be leading in agriculture in this area. So let's get that into the report, I think, and get that really ingrained in Torridge at the moment, because I think we're losing that. Let's build on who we are, as well as what is in the future. The section of Into the Future, I think, is excellent, and some of those points in there are very exciting. I hope we can build on them.
Councillor Lavelle.
So I'd just like to say a little bit more about the River Torridge and the harbour and the estuary in there.
Torridge Harbour and Estuary.
These are all valuable points. It's a very high-level document, and it's very difficult to go into very specific things. But I totally agree that the whole maritime piece is very important to represent. Yeah.
Okay, it's been proposed by, sorry. Councillor Lovell. You've been very quiet tonight, so lovely to hear from you.
Don't spoil it.
Page 179. Limited job diversity. I do object in that paragraph there where it speaks about external shocks, such as COVID-19 and Brexit. Now, can I just remind everybody, Torridge voted heavily for Brexit. It was a political decision. Put that in there and then say, have also triggered sudden disruptions, threatening livelihoods and regional stability. That shouldn't have been in there, Brexit. Put COVID in for that, but nothing to do with Brexit. Should be in there. But it's a very one-sided thing, isn't it? I mean, the whole document's pretty eyewash, really, I think, a lot of it. I don't think it means anything, that document. I looked through it and I think, well, what's it about? All the time and effort that's gone in to creating that for that. I just can't see the purpose of it.
Hopefully it's going to be...
I do object to that, Chair.
hopefully there's gonna be a huge amount of government funding coming at some point in the future.
Yeah, I think if we don't speak up for the area, and there are things in it that I would like to see more of, it's there for discussion. Sean will take them on board, but if we don't get out there and say, this is us, this is what we aspire to, then we're not gonna get anything, and as I just said earlier, we did the same thing for Torridge when we submitted the bid to the government for the deprivation fund. I met with the minister, and the minister was quite impressed with the document that we'd actually presented the area to him. And I think in the coming, whatever comes at us, we need to be able to say this is us, and we need to build on it. So I'm happy for us to adopt it. I think that's all we've got to do, isn't it? Well, I've moved it that we adopt it, yeah, so I'm
Councillor
happy with some reservations.
Councillor Hodgson, second.
Okay.
Can I ask for clarity?
Yes, please.
Yeah, 0.52 of the recommendations, so I stand up properly. It will come back to us to approve, it won't be just amended without us seeing it again.
No, that wasn't the intention. The intention was minor adaptations that we discussed tonight would just be made in the document published. That was the intention.
So it won't be coming back again.
After
I'm happy to vote. I shall abstain at this point then, Chair. I don't think it's reflecting enough of our parishes.
I'm quite happy to propose that it does come back when we've added stuff to it.
Can I
We can
second
do it all
that?
again. Leave
Yeah,
it. That's fine.
I'll second that.
I'm afraid the officers are giving me quite a cool look.
I'm just wondering, are you changing your proposal then? 'Cause your
Oh, I
original
see, I'd have to
proposal
change
was-
it, well, I can't find the proposal.
Your proposal was the recommendations on
Move the
page
re-
one
move the
six
recommendation.
two.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
It's right at the front.
So
Right.
not 5.2, it's the, we would, so 5.1, yes, not 5.2, but we would bring it back instead, rather than make those.
Okay.
Well, we could bring back the amendments.
We've already proposed on page 162, so I'm asking if there's been a amendment to
I'll stick with it, that's on my recommendation, we go with what's on 5.1 and 5.2.
So councillor Hodgson, are you seconded in that?
Well, I never even opened my mouth. Unusual for me. I did jump up before councillor Pennington stood up and I sat down again to say, yes, I seconded it, subject to the amendments. Are we now, am I being asked to second
No,
this?
I'm sticking with the
As our-
recommendation.
Not to come back?
No, so the one that's been proposed are the recommendations on page 162.
Yeah, I've just given him my copy of it, so,
So that is the council
yeah,
adopt
no, I can, yeah, that's fine.
So it's 5.1 and 5.2 is what you've proposed.
Well, I was happy when James suggested that we actually brought it back, and I think several of the councillors wanted to see a slightly amended. I know it prolongs the agony.
What is the urgency, Sharon?
There is no urgency. It's a document that's also gone to North Devon for consideration. It's exactly the same
Okay.
document.
Well, I'm
It
not
won't just be
prepared to
approved by you.
second
It will be approved by them.
you, councillor James,
No.
I'm sorry. But I would like to counter-propose that we actually bring this back with amendments, and it affords everybody the opportunity. You've all been very vocal tonight. We're all very good at this. We don't forward that information necessarily to the officers when they circulate it to us before the meeting. And I know I've asked personally for things to be sent to me, and I'm still waiting. So I would suggest that if anybody else has got anything else they want to add, that they contact Sean and
Yeah, that's fine. I take on board any representations. Obviously, we're going to have a bit of a juggling act because we're not going to put every single detail into the
Yeah,
document.
yeah.
We're going to try and capture the essence of the points that's been
Yeah.
made tonight around agriculture and community and what's special.
So what are we saying then? Just 5.1 and that 5.2 will come back for final ratification?
that's right, that's my proposal.
Order. I did second councillor James's suggestion and it came
Oh,
back
did you?
after the amendments. I did second that.
Thank you, thank you.
After the, so councillor James hasn't.
Table.
Yeah, okay.
I'm confused.
Yeah, councillor James hasn't made an amendment, so councillor, this was, I was just trying to get clarification on what was been proposed. Councillor James has proposed the recommendations as is on page 162.
So I wasn't trying to create a sense of urgency for anyone, I was just trying to clarify what had been proposed. That hasn't been seconded yet.
I'll withdraw that anyway.
Right, the councillor Hodson's now proposed that it comes back.
Yes.
And I'll second that.
Everybody's happy.
Right, so we're going to vote on 5.1, councillor Britton as set out in Appendix 1, but the additions, alterations, amendments, as discussed here, Sean will take on board. They will come back for further ratification at a future meeting.
No, I think it's just been proposed that it comes back to full council with amendments.
In its entirety. So that's withdrawn then, basically.
I've withdrawn mine, yes.
So item 7 is withdrawn then, so, okay.
Chair, just for the record, these all been put forward as proposals and sort of accepted blankly, but just for the record, I would vote against taking out the Brexit consideration. It's quite obvious that there's huge disruption in the economy.
Well, for all of those of you that have strong feelings on any of these things, you've got Sean's email. Email all of those into him.
Well, thank you, Chair.
That's why it'll be forgotten between now and tomorrow morning otherwise.
So Chair, can we know what we're voting on now?
You're not voting on anything now, it's been withdrawn.
Mine's
I made a proposal.
And I seconded
by councillor Grantham.
that it comes back with the amendments and we then approve it.
Yes.
Bring it back with the amendments.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, it's being deferred then.
Well done, yeah.
That's what I said, it might as well.
If you just defer the whole thing and it can bring it back with those amendments. I'll propose it's deferred. All those in favour? It's unanimous, it's deferred.
Thank you, Chair.
Shouldn't that have been voted on?
Right, that more or less brings us to the end of the meeting.
But it's wrong.
I don't know where item 8 disappeared to, but there is no item 9 or 10 or 11. Yeah, so I declare the meeting closed at 6:31.